Yes. Let's record before we start discussing. Yeah, so this Lynette asked what our next book is. And our next book is, what did I say? Keeping Your Children's Ministry on Mission. And I will post the link to that later today. And we are talking about how, what a quick read our book has been. Got my blur on so you can't see it, but, and how these chapters have been kind of short and quick compared to Jim's, although his were short chapters. There was a lot to kind of dive into. And I feel like this book has been good. And I don't know, but I don't feel like I'm learning anything new, but maybe just from a different perspective or like a different viewpoint, maybe I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like the book has been good, but I don't feel like I'm learning anything wow, amazing, new. I don't know, just me. Um, but it's been a good book so far. It's just I feel like it's been I don't know, stuff I know. But anyways, babble. I'm gonna go ahead and open this up in prayer, and then we'll get on to chapter 4, which is starting us off with getting out of the clouds. So let's open in prayer and we'll go from there. Almighty Father, we thank you for the opportunity to serve. We thank you for the opportunity to read this book, to challenge ourselves and maybe learn something new. Lord, to learn how to do things well and efficiently. And I pray that we have a great discussion today, learn something from one another. Bless our time here and bless the ministries represented. Lord, we love you. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. So chapter 4, get out of the clouds. What were your thoughts about chapter 4 with to-do lists?
I really liked that kind of that imagery he presented with, like, I think it's right on like the first page of it. For the sake of the illustration, let's call those bright moments rainbows. How many rainbows have you disregarded because surviving the torrent rains was all the burden you could bear? And I was just like, that is just such a good reminder. And I think of not only in ministry, but how I do that in life. We get so caught up in just, I need to make it to tomorrow. It was funny because I was actually talking to, as we're talking about like balance and stuff, what we were talking as children's pastors here, we meet once a month for lunch. And I made the comment about downtime. And they're like, well, what is downtime? Like, who has downtime in kids ministry? And I was like, well, it's any time, whatever I'm doing this week, I can push it off to next week and nothing horrible is going to happen. But just that idea of like, we don't really have downtime. Like kids ministry is one of those rare ministries where when everybody else is gearing down, so they get their breathing moments, we're gearing up and we just kind of keep gearing up. And there's the occasional downtime where it really just means that you could put it off for another week and nobody would die or not have a lesson. So I just really like that idea of how often do we get caught up in, oh, I just got it. And the idea that um, our emotions don't determine whether or not we're actually overwhelmed. Like the idea that we can't let them run our schedules and how often they do that.
Yeah, so this one's actually got me thinking, and a little further along, it says, we say we're so busy today, I don't know if I can get it all done. And what does that even mean? You've set self-imposed expectations for yourself that you aren't even sure are possible. And thinking about the school year winding down, and we, continue with our same schedule during the summer. But a lot of our volunteers are checking out. They're either going home, because they're here for college, or they're don't want to commit because of their summer schedule or whatever. That becomes really difficult or challenging for us to manage. We always get it covered, but it seems like, every week it's an uphill battle to get that covered. And then we have some projects that we want to kind of look forward to and get ready for the fall. And we're starting a building campaign in the fall. And as part of that, they asked the leadership and staff to write one or more devotionals that they could include in a prayer book that they're going to have like a 30 days of prayer. And it's kind of focused in on how we're growing and all that. So we did that, and they have that all together. And then someone came up with a brilliant idea. Oh, we should have a kid and family friendly version of this. And so couldn't you just edit these 30 days and make them, kid and family friendly? And that would be so great. We could give those out to the families. And so we thought about that. And again, it wasn't like immediate. So we put it on the back burner for a few weeks. But now we have to look at, okay, how can we realistically get that done? And so it's between me and my administrative assistant, who's really good at writing. We thought, well, we'll divide them all up. We'll review them, decide if we can use the material and just edit it, or do we have to start from scratch on some of these? And so we looked at it, we got all that figured out. And the more I'm thinking about it, so we calculated how many we need to get done per week. We have to get like 2 to 3 done per week to meet the deadline, which is in July. And I'm like, with everything else that we're trying to do, I don't think it is really very realistic, because this week is already almost done and I have not done anything on it, and so as I'm thinking about this book and thinking about my life, I thought, why don't we just do a prayer calendar instead, where it's just an idea, a thought, that matches up with what they're doing for the everybody else. And, it seems like it'd be much more doable for families and stuff. So that's what our executive pastor's gone this week, so I can't get it approved by him, but I'm sure I can get it approved when I talk to him next week. But that's what we're going to go for, is we're just going to do an idea to pray about instead. Because it's just you can't just let people keep dumping more stuff on you. And he way underestimated how much time, because I said, well, would it be okay if my assistant worked on this? And he goes, well, we could probably, swing 5 extra hours. I'm like, 5 extra hours? Are you kidding? For 15, she'd have to write 15 devotions. So yeah, no.
I sometimes think that everybody should do 3 months in children's ministry so they actually understand more about what the job is like. Because basically that person is thinking that it's going to take 20 minutes to write a devotion. It can take you 20 minutes to just find some kind of game that the family could play together if you're lucky, So yeah, people just don't really have an idea, I think. I think for me, the thing that really popped out here is your emotional health is directly dependent on your ability to manage the details of your daily schedule. That was whoa, because it's so true. And I think it's easy to be so stressed about work and your schedule and then take it all out in your family, speaking from experience. Yeah, just to take a step back and actually start looking after your emotional health, because it's actually so important. We can't live stressed all the time. Yeah. So that's what stood out to me in this chapter.
What's crazy about that stress too. So, we all have that undercurrent of stress going on, because of the nature of our ministry. But and we might look like we're handling it okay. We might even think we're handling it okay. We survived another week, and but that takes a toll on you over the years. If you just keep doing that year after year after year after year, that it definitely takes a toll on your, not just your mental health, but your physical health. It really affects you physically.
I liked how we talked about on page 4, the endless cycle. My unrealistic schedule leads to unmet expectations, which leads to worry about my job, my family security, and those I serve. I determine to pick up the pace. I add more to my schedule, fail once again, and then let worry yet again about the consequences. But wait, I'll pick up the pace. And I kind of chuckled because I'm like, man, this is my life right now. My spring busy season. Like I just add more and I kick myself for it. And I try to say no, but I'm like, oh no, I'll just do it this spot. I'll squeeze it in here. And yeah, the cycle just continues. And you wear yourself out, as you know, you were just saying, and it's not, good. And then when I read that there at the end, like Lynette mentioned, I highlighted it, and it talked about your emotional health is directly dependent on your ability to manage the details of your daily schedule. And just thinking about that and how it affects, my family and my kids. And I'm like, man, I can't let this get to me. My family needs all of me, and they need, you know, a happy, relaxed mom, not stressed out, frustrated mom because of work and things, and to be able to leave that at the door. So yeah, that was really good for this chapter.
I think another big problem that we have is we look at people like us in their ministry and we see what they're doing and we think, oh, we should be doing, they're doing this, this, and this. We should be doing some of those things too. And so we just like, and we all do things at a different pace too. So, when when you're like me and you're very detail oriented, it takes me longer to do some of those things. I mean, I'm trying to kind of get over some of that, but I have to realize that's who I am. And I can't like completely set that aside. So I either have to delegate or I have to like say, that's just too much. And we want to be able to do the things that we really want to do, our priorities with excellence. We don't want to like do everything sloppily.
I think the problem with the comparison, and I've been learning this as a parent, is that although someone appears to be the same as us, we don't have their kids. We don't have their volunteers. We don't have their lead pastor. And all of that factors in. Like I think of, when we look at other parents in our lives and we're like, oh, their kids are doing this or they're just so, XYZ. And then you come home and you're like, how did I get such feral children? But then we have to factor in the fact that, hey, but their kids don't have what my kids do. Their kids don't think, they don't have the same personalities. The parents themselves are not necessarily like me and how I handle situations. They haven't lived in our past. It's just crazy how much of our lives, even who we are in the past factors into who we are now and experiences. But I find in the Kidman world, I remember having an intern. It's been like 5 years ago, and she attended a lunch with me, and she was like, "You guys just compete a lot." Like it just felt like to her, and I mean, I didn't notice it. I was like, "Oh no, we're just sharing." And she's like, "No, it just felt like you guys would be like, oh, I'm doing this,' and the next person would be like, well, I'm doing this,' and it was like we almost had to one up each other. I mean, the dynamics have since changed, but I think that's kind of how we run. We're like, oh, I'm doing this. Oh, well, I did this and I do this, and the reality is we can't. Some of us don't have the budgets. Some of us don't have the manpower. Some of us have similar situations, but we have someone hired underneath us to work. And, it's kind of like the Pinterest moms. How do those women do it? Oh, they have a nanny. So unless you want to get a nanny, it's different.
I hate those Pinterest moms. If you're one of those, I still love you. I just don't like what you do. No.
No, I'm definitely not a Pinterest mom.
Oh,
I think
Pinterest moms are actually just nice and clean in that shop. My sister once sent me a picture and I was like, wow, that's really clean. What's the rest of the house look like? She's like, we're not talking about it.
it's like when COVID was on and there were all these videos about just decorate one corner in your house to to look like really nice, and that's where you do all your videos from. So the rest of the house can look crazy. It doesn't matter. No one's going to see that. Um, I just want to address this competition thing that you said, Kristen, because I think that I think there's something in there that like the Bible says to us we shouldn't compare ourselves to each other, that we've all got our own gifting, but it's so easy to fall into that trap, I think. And I know I've also got a circle of children's pastors that we meet together, and we've been meeting together probably for nearly 10 years now. So for the most part, we know each other quite well. And we said right from the beginning, this is a support group. It's a safe place to come and say, you know what? My kids are driving me mad. If my pastor gives me one more thing to do, I'm actually going to scream. Because like we've already spoken about it on this group. There's nowhere you can't go and say that to people in your church, that you can't dump your track there. So yeah, and it's when we speak about what we do, it's so that we can celebrate each other. And it took a while, I think. And for some people, they kind of like had to catch the idea that we're all in this together. Like one friend always used to say, there's enough unsaved children for all of us. We don't have to compete with the children. And like, let's see how we can actually help each other. So it's working quite well, because I can pick up the phone and say, hey, I need a lesson for Mother's Day. Who's got something? Or not pick up the phone nowadays, send a WhatsApp. Yeah, and it's just actually a really great support group. But it's like finding those people that that don't see you as a threat, or what you're doing well as a threat. And I suppose being open enough to actually be honest about where you're messing up and where you're not coping. But I suppose that involves trust too. So yeah.
I think it's really great that we're coming off of Jim's book that talked a lot about the delegation, the how to hand things off, as we go into this book on the myth of balance, of trying to figure out, okay, now we got to manage this crazy schedule that children's ministry people say yes to and that we keep adding to, but how he gave us so many practical tips and tried and crude methods on how to try to create a balance in our scheduling and how to be able to manage all of these things that we have on our plate and all of these things that we're trying to juggle. And so I think it's a really great second book off of his, of what we just went through.
I kind of missed the end there because you were kind of muffled, Kristen. Or did everybody else catch it and just not me? Or not Kristen, I'm sorry, Stacy.
I was just saying that I think that it's a great follow-up book to the last book we just read. Jim gave us so many practical tips on how to write job descriptions, delegate things off, because we have such a crazy schedule that no one person can do all the things that are asked for children's ministry people. And so being able to actually have some practical things that say, okay, how can I make this more manageable? Because we, like Deborah said, oh, sure, it only takes 5 hours to write 15 devotionals. So again, this is a great supplement book to what Jim just taught us how to do.
No, I agree. Did anybody by chance work on the priorities list at the end and want to share? Or if not, that's fine, and we can move on to chapter 5.
I use the Grow day planner that they have, and they have like a section where you put your top 7 priorities for the week. And I have found that to be really helpful, because sometimes you get suddenly like inundated with stuff and you're like, can't remember what I was actually supposed to do this week. And so I have found that I start every, like my Monday morning, I sit down and I like write out, these are the 7. Sometimes it's like 15 when I get very specific sometimes, like I need to plan this event and then I actually need to do this event. But I just found that the way that they have it set up, they have like in something I want to achieve, some achieving thing. But they also have like a connection piece. So I found that their Grow Planner was just really great for those priorities, like not, 10:30 meeting, but I need to photocopy all of these sheets this week. And I usually prioritize. So I'll write out the 5 or 7 things that I need done. And if there's more that need to get added, I just pop them in around the page. But it has been great even for when I'm sitting in my desk being like, oh, that doesn't have to be done this week, but I need that done in 2 weeks. I can go in and write it on the line. So it's already in there. I don't have to remember it in 2 weeks.
So, just because I use this as my own resource, like I get this calendar called the Passion Planner, and it's my favorite calendar. I used to use it way more detailed than I do now, and I need to get back to doing it. But I love it because of how he's saying to prioritize and things. But like this is like this week's stuff, but it has like my personal to-do list, work to-do list, space of infinite possibilities. There we go, so you can actually see. But like broken down by time slots. On the side, it has this week's focus, good things that happened. And then like what's really cool is at the end of the month, it has all these questions for you to go over on like a monthly reflection, like your most memorable, your biggest lessons, what are you happy with, what you're not, how to assess. Like it's really good overall if I used all the things it suggests to use. So when I use this to its fullest, like it does help me like prioritize. Like last week, my calendar was a hot mess of all the things, but when I write down all those things and prioritize like he was talking about today, I get stuff done, which is nice. But when I don't, like this week, I did not start off my week by filling out my calendar, and it makes such a difference. It's horrible when I don't do that. So, yeah, I love this calendar for that reason. It definitely helps me prioritize and get things done the right way, or at least most efficiently.
Can you show me the front? I'm trying to find it just because I like planners and every year I have to get a new one. It's
Yeah,
called
so they have different designs, but this is the one I chose.
It's like, I can't even guess. Like roughly in the $10.
No, so it comes in different sizes, and I didn't realize I chose the mammoth size planner. But I think this one was like $35. So, but you can get the small. I didn't mean to get this big. I wanted the next size down. So, but this is like an 8.5 by 11. Like you can see next to my head, it's huge.
Could you just like send me the link? I'm not gonna be able to find it for that price because here it's gonna be like, I don't know, $1 million. But if you could send me the link so that I know what I'm looking for, because there's a couple different passion planners, but none of them look like that. So if you could just send the link, then that way I can figure it out.
Yep, I'd be happy to. Oh, unmute.
So do you actually have time to do that end part where it says like, what did you learn the most? And, when you reflect on your month, because I'm so bad. I'm not a journaler. I'm so bad at doing things like that.
I used to. I used to do that part, and I haven't in a while. So I need to get back on track with the monthly reflections, because it was really helpful to me when I would then plan the next month, because I'd look at my monthly reflections and go, okay, what can I do better? What did I miss? So that's what it helped me with. So
Again, I hate to keep saying that Jim said this and Jim said that. But
can't hear you, Stacy.
can you
It's
not hear me?
muffled. It's just really muffled when you talk.
Oh,
That was a little better, the O.
You sound like you're really far away. Can you move closer?
make an appointment in your calendar.
I think she said to make an appointment in her calendar.
Make an appointment in your actual calendar to do those things. Like actually set a time to say, I'm going to sit down and either evaluate what just happened, plan what's going to come up, that kind of thing. So that's how
it's been really a great way to get those things done.
Hear you loud and clear.
So I'm like bad at writing it down and, you know, listing my priorities and all that. I keep it all in my head, which is not a good place. And so that just adds to the stress level. And I really need to like start paying attention to this and try to do some of these things, because in the past, when I have made a list, and you can check those things off. I mean, they've studied this. That's actually, you get like a rush of endorphins when you check those things off your list. So it's like a physical thing that's happening that's good in your body. So including that post-evaluation that, you know, so I'm going to try, that's going to be my takeaway, is I'm going to really try to start prioritizing things. And I need to get a bigger planner, because mine's just like a calendar right now, and I can't squeeze it all in on those little squares. So I need to get one that has like a daily thing where I can make my lists and notes and things like that. So that'll help.
I definitely love checking off my stuff. It does make me
Yeah.
feel good.
In fact, if I'm having a really stressful time, then I write like I go into more detail, you know, like open the computer, whoo, manage that. I'm being silly, but you know what I mean. Like really, yeah. I love my diary. I'm like a highly planned, highly organized person. So I love my diary. In fact, I actually made my own diary this year because I couldn't find one that I liked. So I've got like the week, and then here I've got notes of like what I actually need to do for the week. So because I was finding that every day I was rewriting stuff that I hadn't done. So now having the notes of this is what I have to do in this week, and then just ticking that off when I've done it. And then on the days, I've just got specific things that have to be done that day, whether I'm working from home or going to be in the office. And then I also like to have like a month at a view. So I know our school holidays, which is only 3 weeks in June, July. So that's starting the middle of June. So I've already diarized like by the middle of May, I need to start working on the program for the middle of June. So I just like to work way in advance, because I find that gives me a little bit of leeway if like he goes into it in the next chapter, you know, when unexpected things happen, then I have a little bit of margin. Someone challenged me years ago about, because I was always busy and I never had time for anything. And then he challenged me and said, you know, you actually need to build margin into your day, that like 20% of your day should be for the what if. And the guy actually does speak about it. And then he kind of sort of uh I feel the way that he spoke about it, it's almost like laughing it off, you know, like what are you supposed to do? Just if your boss comes and sees you, say, yeah, well, you're just waiting for something to happen. Well, I can't even remember the exact words he used, but um, if you have leftover time, then you can tackle like the thing that you put off for next week. You know, there's like we said earlier, there's never nothing to do in children's ministry, but I have found that working in advance helps. So yeah, if I can.
I actually found that really interesting too, Lynette, where he kind of laughs about it and he was like, oh, this is, and I was like, but that's what I do. And it seems to be working. Like I have my list. I don't just fly by the seat of my pants, but I don't know. I've started being like, sometimes God brings people into your office that you were like, I did not need that 2-hour conversation. But the person did. And maybe that's one of the things that isn't more in a parenting book, but they talked about how we should start our day being like, here, God, here's my to-do list, but what do you want me to do? And allowing him to kind of sift through, because what we think is important. Yes, we do need to send out the flyers for VBS. That is important. But A, we could delegate it, or B, maybe we're putting too much effort into that. And he's like, yeah, but that family that you just let walk by your door, like they could have been at your VBS. You know, just that thought.
Well, let's use that as a segue to chapter 5, pardon the exceptions. There's always exceptions and interruptions in kid ministry. I always say kidmin life is the flexible life. You got to roll with the punches. So what were your thoughts on chapter 5? I'll start with saying I never, at least I don't feel like I ever looked at ministry as being impossible. I definitely look at it as being a challenge. And he wrote here, exceptions may make ministry complicated, but they don't make it impossible. And when I read that, I was like, I never thought of it as being impossible. I just thought of it making a challenge. Um, and I don't know if we just, as kids ministry, we're just a different breed and we don't look at things as impossible. We just keep going. Because you just have to. And you be flexible. So I feel like exceptions are just kind of what always happened with kids ministry. You just roll with the punches. You don't have volunteer show ups. You make things, roll with the punch. I feel like we always just kind of roll with the punches. It's just kind of the way it happens. But I liked his approach with the if and when, or was it if and when, or when and that? Those are the key words. When this, then that. And I like the concept, preparing for that. And I feel like naturally we kind of do that. So I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
I was thinking as you were talking how I'm not sure that this is written with kids ministry in mind, because in order to be successful in kids ministry, we have to do if this, then that, or what if. Because you never know when your VBS, suddenly your games can't happen outside because you now have a torrential downpour, or it happens to be the hottest days of the week and you're going, yeah, we can't leave kids outside for 8 hours a day. Or we don't know when that child is going to walk through the door who's having just the worst day ever and they have a substantial downpour. And I think I honestly was a little disappointed in it. I thought he was going to do like the if this, then that, kind of the idea of like, if this happens, so if I end up with an unscheduled meeting this week, then I'm going to plan to do something with my family next week, kind of that if then. And it didn't seem like I got the idea of the ifs being, these are, the once in a lifetime, tornado's gonna, well, maybe not if you live in tornado. In Saskatchewan, the chances of a tornado touching down during my VBS is, even if there's warnings, is very, very minimal. They're more likely to hit fields than our actual cities. But the whens being when my volunteer doesn't show up. And I just found that to be a different look, but I kind of was disappointed in that. I don't know. I didn't find it to be a balance issue. That just became a pre-planning, but I think maybe in kids ministry, you're right, that is something that we just have naturally embedded in our DNA, or we've learned the hard way.
Just last night, we had our slime night here to end our connection nights where like the leaders and I got slimed. Well, good old Michigan weather, we went down to 40 degrees at 8 o'clock. Well, I'm not going to get slimed outside at 40-degree temperatures. I'd freeze. I'd become a slime sickle versus, just drenched in slime. So we had to somehow last minute incorporate three leaders, and we had to find 3 kiddie pools, move everything inside with 30 kids into a classroom. And I mean, it turned into more chaos and we had one small incident, but I mean, we made it work, and you just do it. We rolled with the punches and we made it happen, and it went off, and slime was everywhere, but the kids had a good time, and we made it happen. So, but it's just what you do in kids ministry.
Yeah, we once had a power outage in the middle of the service. Nobody planned for it. I mean, the service themselves, but you've got kids upstairs in a room that now doesn't have any of the tech that they needed. And yeah, you're right. We go with it. I see, Stacy, you wrote you had poor air quality. That happens. We get like secondhand air quality over here, and it is, yeah, I hear you on that. You're like, what are we supposed to do? I can't. But
Sounds like they need a kids ministry point of view for this book. Any other
But just think what being in Kidman has prepared us for. No vacation can ever go awry. No event can ever go. We've got this. We have been there, been trained, been tried and true. Who wants to run for president?
perhaps that's what the world needs, more kidmin presidents and less businessmen.
So I think one of the biggest things that's helped me is just to remember that nothing crosses my path that God hasn't allowed. And so no matter what the circumstances, that he can work that, work that out for our good purpose and his glory. And so, when the volunteer doesn't show up or the power is out or whatever it is, we can learn something from it. It's an opportunity to, grow and, problem solve together and all those kind of things. So when the check-in stations go down on Sunday morning, just as the kids are starting to arrive, then I have, we have a backup plan. And so we just, okay, calmly get the backup plan ready to roll and give instructions to everybody. So it's good to have a backup plan and to know that things can go wrong. But again, that for whatever reason, God has allowed it and we just need to kind of roll with it. So that's been the thing that's helped me over the years.
But I think also we need to remember, and this is a quote, I can't remember who said it on my desk, not there. And I think I said it last week too, that God gives us enough energy to do what he has called us to. So if we're feeling like we're drowning and we can't seem to sort it out, the question we have to ask ourselves is, what am I taking on that God has not called me to? So, whether it's, your pastor's devotional, just because he wants it done, doesn't mean that God is like, yes, she is ideal for that. She should do that. And kind of that helping us to sort through all of that. And I thought there'd be a bit more on family. I was just thinking about that. How many of you have like family, like your families? And I mean, most of us have our families that serve alongside us, but I was thinking like, how am I putting it? I'm trying to think like, maybe they don't serve in kids ministry, but your spouse or and your kids serve elsewhere. How do you find that balance? Like, so for example, my husband is currently running our Alpha program and I was like, oh, I'm going to help you. It'd be great. And now my kids are like, we're done with church. Like my sister goes, do you live there? Like, is that, cause you're either going there or you're going to dance. Like, do you live at home at all? And I've been like wrestling with this idea of like, how do we create balance? Cause I have stuff I have to do. And I don't want my spouse to now be out of the things that he's passionate or that he wants to do. But how do we find that balance? And have you guys come across that?
My husband is on security at church, so his is more like when we're there type of deal. Although it's our security team and what falls under that is growing. And so it's becoming more of things he's doing at home now too, versus just being security at church, watching folks come in and whatnot. So the dynamic of that is changing. And so, yeah, I don't know. We haven't gone to church more because of it, but his work at home is increasing because of it. So that's been a newer dynamic for us. And he's volunteer based, like where, I'm paid staff, but yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it hasn't yet changed how much or how often we're at church. But my kids are there all the time anyways with me.
But not just on that, in the like that balance, because now that he's doing more stuff at home and you're doing your stuff that you typically did at home, how are you finding that balance? Like, I mean, I think volunteer families struggle with this too, as in the spouses do, and they both are doing their own things. But how do we? I think that if we're going to tell our volunteers they need to have balance and that they need to take time off, that we need to do that. But how do you navigate that now that he's having to do more at home, in opposed to before where it worked?
Yeah, we're not doing it well because I'm helping because now I'm helping him because he's trying to figure out how to use Planning Center, which is a program I know all about, and he has no clue. And they somewhat trained him, but not well enough. And so it's me taking my time, the time I'm supposed to be off, which is our afternoons with the kids, and I'm helping him. So it's not managed well. And then, yeah, now we're adding all these events to our church calendar, and now they're wanting security at all of these events. And so it's changing our lives and, the lives of other team members and whatnot. But my husband is one of the leads, and, it's stretching us for sure. So I still don't think I answered your question other than no, we're not balanced well at all.
Yeah, my husband, he's one of my volunteers. He does the preschool class. And I must say, when our son was little, he looked after him. So our son was always with him and, freed me up. So we also haven't really faced the same kind of challenge that you're facing. Yeah, because he's involved in children's ministry and he's an elder, but that kind of like happens outside of when we were years ago, we were both elders, and then our son used to just have to come with us to meetings. So there was also a time when, yeah, that he was at church or meetings a lot. So yeah, I also don't have any kind of insight or can't help in any way, but I think we just need to remember, like what Jim was saying in his book as well, that actually family comes first, and that church needs to be a good experience for our own children so that they'll carry on coming to church and not get fed up. I know when my son, when he was he always helped me. So it was always, so the joke was if one of you is in ministry, you're all in ministry. So my son and my husband were always like my plug-ins. If somebody didn't pitch, then they would help. But then I realized when he was getting older that he didn't want to do it anymore. He was doing it because he knew I needed it, and he wanted to help me. But then I had to make a real effort to find somebody to replace him and find another emergency person, because I couldn't use him anymore because it was going to start damaging him, if that makes any sense. So yeah. So may the Lord give you wisdom.
So on that, I'm sorry, I've been working on a succession plan for a paper I'm writing, doing succession planning, and I was talking to about how we transition our lay leaders, and I was talking to someone who had done a lot of different transitions, and she made the comment, she said, like, we only have 10 hours to put to this. How are we supposed to train other people? And then going off this conversation, do we think that the church does a really good job of helping families and helping in turn helping their own staff? Like, is church set up for balance? Do we set up our current congregations? And I mean, it might differ. Like I have found that I think there is a difference in cultural and ethnic backgrounds and how they do church versus how North American church happens. But is our North American church set up healthy in a sense that we are mindful of the fact that, we do that 80-20 rule, but are we set up in a way that we're allowing for the balance to even be possible? For example, like Jody, you and your husband, you're both in lead places. How is the church accommodating your family? Like whether that's the requirements of you on a Sunday morning or your requirements of your holidays or whatever, how are they accommodating your family to allow the fact that neither you nor him burn out in the next year? Because if one of you goes, chances are you're both going. Like if you hit burnout, your husband's not going to keep serving because now his wife is unfunctioning. Are we setting ourselves up for success in the way we structure our ministries? I know there's lots of like, oh, I rotate through and I do all these things, but you hear so much of pastoral burnout. I don't think it's just because one person in the job is doing it. You've got wives who hate coming, who hate the fact that their husband has to do church. It's not healthy. It's not good. Is our churches set up that for success?
I think that's a really good question. I struggle with it because here's my thing in last 7 minutes. This is horrible timing, so I'll try to talk it fast. The church I grew up in was a type of church where the whole church served. That the culture mindset we grew up in, everybody served. And I don't remember my mom or my dad, and my mom served more than my dad. My mom was a Sunday school teacher year round, year round. And I don't ever remember my mom complaining of burnout. I don't remember many people. I had the same, I mean, I remember all the Sunday school teachers being the same teachers growing up. It never changed. And I just feel like our mindset has changed, our cultural mindset has changed, or at least, I mean, from what I grew up in. And I'm not trying to talk negatively or bad, but I feel like that mindset has changed. And I'm not saying that people don't want to be at church, but I feel like, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, however old I am, like it used to be about serving in the church, being the church body. It's very different now, where I feel like everyone has such a busy schedule that they don't have time for church. So the time that they do have, they just want to be in church. Hopefully that makes sense. And so why serve? Because I don't have the time to do it. The time I have to be at church, I want to just be in church and that's it. So I feel like we have a big cultural shift of that, of committing to the church 110% 20, 30 years ago to now where people just don't want to. Their lives are too busy. Their schedules are too busy. And God, church, for those few hours on a Sunday morning is not as a high of priority or commitment to them because everything else is. I don't know. That's the way I look at it. And I struggle with that because I grew up in that, and I feel that that should be such a big part. And I don't understand why people don't have that same mentality. And I'm really working on it. And I don't judge people, but I just struggle that I don't understand why people don't have that same, like, God just wants 2 hours of your Sunday morning. But again, I know everyone grows up differently, but that's what I feel like is that cultural difference shift. There's been a huge shift over the past 20, 30 years of that, I feel.
Yeah, so that and coupled with the expectations of what church and Sunday school and all that's going to look like have just gotten a lot higher. So it's like there's more work to be done at church, and we've got less people that are buying into that because people it's just not the same priority as it was when I was growing up. There weren't other things to do on Sunday. I mean, Sunday was like the stores were closed, the convenience store was open, but the stores were closed. We didn't have friends over on Sunday. We kind of hung out with our family or whatever. It was reserved for family activities. And there weren't like sporting events and all that kind of thing going on. So now people have all these other things and they aren't coming to church every single week. And then when they do come, they want to go to church. They don't want to serve. That happens a lot. In fact, some of my people that do volunteer, we have 2 services. Some of them don't go to the other service. They skip. I mean, maybe they watch it at home online. I don't know. But yeah, so it's definitely a shift there. And then the expectations have just grown for what children's ministry is going to look like, because we feel like we're competing with what's happening in the schools, what's happening in the world around them, all of that business. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure.
And
I think we have to,
ministry and church. I mean,
Yeah.
our church, and I mean, I'm not, not saying church has turned into a show, but I mean, like now there's lights and there's production
Yeah.
and I mean, I like those things. I love what our church is doing. It's fantastic, but those require a lot more volunteers and you know, there's just so much and it's a lot.
We do a lot. I wonder. Now, this is just like one of those hypothetical, like, could we pull it off? What if all of the children, we have to do this like countrywide because we know what happens if we don't do it across the board. Let's just go on strike for a year. No kids programming outside of like bare bones Sunday school or children's church. You're not even getting Sunday school now. You're just going to get during the service. We will provide one program for the children. That's it. Just a thought. What if we did that? And then maybe we would either see a restart in how our parents are interacting and how what we actually value. I don't know. COVID did that. It felt like everybody in my situation, right? I feel like we came back being like, no, now we need more programs. And it was like, did we not learn anything during COVID? But just a thought, what if we did that and just give ourselves that like breather to breathe and maybe we wouldn't all be burnt out. Because you're right. I think we see a change in like family dynamic. We now have like, even when I look at our church in the past like 20 years, the number of families that now have two parents working. So moms aren't home all the time, which, you know, a lot more space to plan those Sunday school lessons. Yeah, we do have kids in like everything. Our families are a little bit smaller and there is a me focused culture that I need to get stuff. And little do we know that serving that 5-year-old is going to change your world. But you have to tolerate them first. So
I also think that I mean I can only speak into South African culture, obviously, but yeah, in the last 20 or 30 years, a lot has changed. Um, most most you don't really have a lot of stay-at-home moms. You don't. There's a lot to do on a Sunday. Even some of our sports, like our Western Province, which is like like the Michigan, all the best kids in Michigan, say, in your state. So that's our state is Western Province. So that all happens on a Sunday morning now. Yeah, and also I find a lot of children have got so many extramurals that they're doing over and above the things that they like the extramurals that they're doing at school. So mums and dads are driving around so much that often we hear on Sundays that just need a break. Yeah, I think that's changed. And then also, Kristen, just to go back to your question about, I've served with 4 pastors now. So I've never changed churches, but it feels like the church has changed 4 times. But I think it depends very much on the pastors, like what kind of atmosphere they set. So I remember one pastor in the past, it was very busy. There were meetings, there were lots of meetings, lots of things we all had to be at. Whereas our pastor now is quite chilled and it's like, if you can't make it, you can't make it. And he's very family orientated. So I think it does depend on the pastor or the leadership.
I think coming from the D6 conference too, just the shift of changing things from it being just children's ministry to how is that now a multi-generational ministry? How is it part of the church? Meaning taking an event and making it, I'm going to use Awana Grand Prix for an example. Take that out of Awana, make it a men's ministry event as a family event that comes through. And then it becomes a different focus of it's the families serving the families instead of it being another program, to use that term, that's just in a siloed ministry. So how do we work with raising up strong families through the ministries that are happening versus just different events for families to attend or do?
I know I don't have my book here, but when we met with Matt Markins, when we were reading Children's Ministry in a New Reality, he had talked about too how parents talk about how packed out their calendars are and blah, 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 and they just don't have the time. And he talked about, erasing your calendar and putting in God first, like scheduling in God, like making that the priority and building off your schedule, from there. And I think, that's what's missing is we don't do that. Like it's, you were saying, Lynette, that sports, the best, whatever, the Western Conference or whatever, that's how it is here too. I mean, Sundays, I have kids coming in their soccer uniforms, cleats, shin guards, the whole shebang, because they're either just came from a game or they're going right to a game. Like it's all that it is on Sundays. So, but I think this is definitely a topic that we could talk a lot about. Unfortunately, it's 2:30. I think it's a good one to discuss though. Brainstorming ways, because I think this is a big problem in ministry in general, like not just kids ministry, but ministry is what Kristen initially started the conversation on is, burnout. And, we've got a small crew of volunteers are doing so much and where are the rest? And, it's just this cycle, it seems like. So I think this is a good sounding board. If we ever just had a day to discuss something and just kind of brainstorm as Kidmin leaders from around the world and different viewpoints and such. So I love these conversations. But all good things must come to an end. So does anybody like to close us in prayer today?
Yeah, I'll close.
Awesome. Thanks, Lynette.
Just if we have that conversation, can we not record it? Because I don't want it on YouTube. I mean, or on Facebook.
No. Something like that, like problem issues, I would not record that.
Father, thank you for what you're doing in each one of our ministries. And thank you, Father, for what you're doing in our life. Lord, I pray that we would take, that you would sift what we've read and what we've discussed tonight or today, and show us, Father God, what are the things that we need to hold on to, and what are the things that we need to implement into our lives. And then, Lord, please show us how to do that. Father, I just pray that you'd bless us, bless our families, and bless our ministries. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lynette. Well, although we didn't get
Pleasure.
to chapter 6, that's okay. We had some really good discussion today. Next week are the last two chapters, chapters 7, 8, and then that this, then that chapter there at the end. So read those 3 sections and we'll be finishing out the book. I will post information on the next book. We will not be meeting the author of this book as I did not get in touch with him. So I'm sorry about that. So we'll be maybe just taking a week off so we give people time to order the next book. Does that sound okay? All right, cool.
Sorry, I missed my mute. What if we turned that 2 weeks where we normally be meeting the novel into that conversation we were just talking about, an unrecorded, we can't solve the world problems, but let's actually unpack it. I mean, we got an extra week. This only took us 3 weeks.
Yep.
Thoughts?
Sounds good to me. I'm
Okay.
down for that.
So that's the 9th of May.
I have no idea.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep, May 9th. So May 9th, we'll make a special Zoom call on unpacking burnout, volunteers, and
Overscheduling.
Unrealistic
overscheduling.
or
Yeah.
unrealistic expectations.
It's all through
That
adjectives.
covers a lot. I'm sorry, I'm gonna miss the next 2 weeks.
Oh
So,
no.
yeah, so, but that's all right. So I hope to be back. We're heading up north. Our son is coming home from Traverse City to go trout fishing. And so we're going to go up north next Wednesday. And then the following week, we're going to be over in Holland.
Oh, fun.
So.
Well, I hope you have a wonderful time.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
I'll
Have
also miss next week because we've got that Chain Cook conference. So
Oh.
I also have to be
yeah.
on it.
All right. Well, then we'll see you on the 9th for our special breakdown talk. All right, guys. Have a great weekend. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.